Joining me right now is best-selling author Dr. James Lindsay. James, welcome.
Hey, thanks.
So tell us about your most recent book that just came out.
Yeah, so I just had a book come out end of February called The Queering of the American Child. The goal is to talk about an academic subject called queer theory. Everybody's now familiar with queer theory. Why are there all these kink things happening at pride parades? Why are there drag queens in classrooms? Why is there so much sexuality education happening in schools? But a lot of people don't know that there's an entire 50-year-old academic theory or 30-year-old academic theory with 50-year roots called queer theory behind it, or that there's 20 or 30 years of moving queer theory into education intentionally behind that as well. So we try to expose what that is, explain what it is, and clarify its agenda and its operation for parents and teachers who want to be able to fight back in schools.
Now, you also know a great deal about Marxism. Tell us where we are at as a country in regards to Marxism. How close are we to actually becoming a Marxist society?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer. We are undoubtedly going through a cultural revolution in the model of Mao Zedong, which was a Chinese Communist Party leader originally. He took over in the 50s, ruled through 76 when he died, and we are going through a cultural revolution. I don't know how successful it is. It's going better for our side now than it was 3 years ago. Think of all the things that you feel comfortable saying now that you didn't feel comfortable saying in public 2 or 3 years ago. Think of the things you hear pushback. Look at how Pride this year is kind of just falling on its face after the spectacles of the last 2 years. So we're making progress against the cultural revolution, but there are some other major tools in play. I mean, obviously they're flirting around with the idea of another pandemic with this bird flu. So they want to use the public health lever. We know that the climate change lever is something they're always trying to pull on. We know that they can threaten or stimulate wars and try to justify it that way. And they're still indoctrinating and brainwashing our children in schools. So it's a toss-up at this point, really.
Now, you mentioned the shift over the last 3 years. What do you think the reason is for the shift where people are sort of fighting back a little bit more? What do you think is driving that?
There's an old saying that what the communists fear more than anything, more than death itself, is exposure. And we have done a very good job, and I'm proud to have been part of the vanguard of that, exposing things like that. I mean, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Race Marxism, to expose critical race theory. The title tells you the whole point. It's race Marxism, and then I wrote 100,000 words to make the case airtight. And so we've exposed that this is an agenda, that this isn't just happening to our country. We're not just wandering through weird cultural decay, the fall of the Roman Empire. This is a deliberate attack on our society, our civilization, our values, and our children. And because we've exposed it, we've slowed it down. And when we slow it down, things come to light. You know, we get information about, like we just see, you know, Hunter Biden getting finally convicted on a gun charge. This is a small thing, but it's things moving in the direction of grinding our system toward solving the problem. And that takes time. And so we've bought a lot of time. We've put them in check on a lot of their big agendas. And that's the big part of why we haven't already, I think if Hillary Clinton would have won in 2016, we would have slow walked into this like Canada did and would be at least as bad off as they are, if not worse.
So how do we win, and what does winning look like in the culture war? What does that look like in the end result?
Winning, I think, at the culture war level means a revival of what the founders called the cause of liberty. This desire to express our full humanity through liberty, which means if you want a society that's going to function, people taking responsibility, not for their society, but for their own lives. People self-governing. So winning is going to look like a big movement. We see it actually with a lot of young men wanting to take responsibility for their lives, wanting to become builders, creators of value, contributors to their society, and contributors to their own selves and family. And that's an incredibly important part. Politically, it means that we're going to have to remove the communists from power. They will abuse power to the last minute that they can. Legally, it means overturning what's called disparate impact analysis. You've probably never heard of it, maybe you have, but disparate impact, the term they use for it now is equity. The entire equity, diversity, inclusion program is based off of this doctrine of if there are differences in outcomes by group on average, then there must be discrimination hidden somewhere. That means we've subverted the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, replaced it with an equitable protection clause that doesn't exist in practice. And so winning looks like getting rid of that so that civil rights law protects all Americans equally with blind law, the way it was intended to, the way that the Constitution outlines it.
If the consequences of Marxism have been made clear on numerous occasions now, why do so many in power keep shifting more in that direction, in some instances at least?
Well, Marxism is a system that is unparalleled for concentrating money and power in very few hands. So there's a huge lure there, right? There's the temptation. Money and power, of course, you're going to have politicians attracted to that. The other thing is that Marxists are extremely good infiltrators. A lot of your politicians who you think, why can't they just fight back? Why won't they? They might actually be a communist in Republican clothing. They've been infiltrating the parties since the 1940s. They've been infiltrating. The Democratic Party has now ruptured, and it's just clearly a communist enterprise. But it attracts people who want to punish their enemies. It attracts people who have skeletons in their own closet, because if they can go on the attack, they cover up for the fact that they have skeletons in their closet. If they can be of service to the regime. It's a big lie. Everybody thinks communists are not competitive. Communists are against competition. Bull. Communists are some of the most competitive people on the planet. What they compete in is implementing communism faster, harder, and more maliciously than everybody else. And so it's like this, it's like Hunger Games. And so there's a certain personality type that's also attracted to politics that's attracted to that.
All this is such important stuff. Please tell our listeners where they can get their hands on your book.
Yeah, so you can go, for The Queering of the American Child, you can go to queeringbook.com and pick it up there. Or you can find it at the top listed on my website, which has tons more information. If you want to deep dive on what I research, it's called newdiscourses.com. So the two websites are queeringbook.com and newdiscourses.com.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.